Fear's contagious. Lucky for you, there's no cure.
It all began with a box, an unassuming, time-worn relic buried in the recesses of an estate sale, surrounded by chipped porcelain and dust-covered vinyl. It wasn't the kind of place you'd expect to stumble across something so off. But then again, the universe has a sick sense of humor. I'd gone there out of boredom, a Saturday spent indulging the human propensity for collecting junk. The box caught my eye, not because it was beautiful, but because it wasn't. A plain wooden cube, about the size of a shoebox, with a small keyhole on one side. Its surface was unremarkable, save for faint carvings, runes or glyphs maybe, worn smooth by time. No key, just a box with secrets inside. And I've always been terrible at ignoring secrets. The old man running the sale saw me eyeing it. $5, he said, as though he wanted it gone as much as I suddenly wanted it. Maybe more. What's inside? I asked, already knowing he wouldn't have a clue. He shrugged. Dunno. Never opened it. Didn't have the key. That should have been my first red flag, the kind of statement that makes sensible people walk away. But I've never been accused of being sensible. I handed over a crumpled 5, took the box home, and placed it on my desk like some kind of trophy. It sat there for days, taunting me with its silence. I'd like to say I resisted its pull, but that would be a lie. Curiosity is a drug, and I'm an addict. So I started my search for the key. Antique shops, locksmiths, even eBay. Nothing fit. Frustrated, I considered smashing it open. But something about the box felt alive, sacred almost. And you don't desecrate sacred things without consequences. That's when the whispers started. At first, I thought it was my imagination. A faint, almost imperceptible murmuring in the dead of night. It seemed to come from the box, but every time I pressed my ear to its surface, the sound stopped. Still, the whispers wormed their way into my dreams, filling them with nonsensical phrases and distorted voices. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, the box sitting on my desk, silent and still. Then came the key. I found it on my kitchen counter one morning, a small, ornate thing made of tarnished brass and inscribed with the same runes as the box. I hadn't bought it. I hadn't found it. It had simply appeared. And like the idiot protagonist of every horror story, I didn't question it. I just took it to the box. The lock clicked open with a sound that felt more like a sigh. For a moment, I hesitated, but then the lid creaked upward, revealing the box's contents. A single scrap of parchment, yellowed with age and covered in the same strange glyphs. Beneath it, a smooth, black stone, polished to a mirror shine, cold to the touch and heavy in my palm. The whispers grew louder. That night, I dreamed of a room, a vast, cavernous space lit by a sickly green glow. Its walls were covered in the same runes, pulsating faintly as though alive. In the center of the room stood a figure, tall, emaciated, and shrouded in a tattered cloak. Its face was a void, an absence that somehow stared back at me with unbearable intensity. It raised a hand, pointing at me, and the whispers turned to screams. I woke with the taste of blood in my mouth and the distinct feeling that I was no longer alone. The box sat on my desk, lid ajar, as though it were watching me. Over the next few days, things escalated. Shadows moved where no light should cast them. Objects shifted when I wasn't looking. And always the whispers, a ceaseless litany of incomprehensible words that gnawed at my sanity. I tried to get rid of the box, tossing it in the trash, burying it in the woods, even leaving it on a stranger's porch. It always found its way back. Desperate, I turned to research. The runes, the stone, the whispers, they all pointed to one thing, a ritual. A summoning, perhaps, or a binding. The details were vague, obscured by centuries of mistranslation and fear. But one thing was clear. The box wasn't just an artifact. It was a prison. And something inside it wanted out. The whispers began to make sense. Fragmented phrases coalesced into instructions. guiding me through a series of steps I couldn't resist performing. I gathered candles, drew symbols, and spoke words that felt like ash on my tongue. As I completed the ritual, the air grew thick, oppressive, charged with an electric malice. And then it appeared. The figure from my dreams materialized before me, its void-like face somehow more horrifying in the dim light of my apartment. The whispers stopped, replaced by a deafening silence that pressed against my skull. It stepped closer, and I realized, too late, that the box hadn't been its prison. It had been its anchor, a tether keeping it from fully crossing into our world. Now it was free. I wish I could tell you what happened next, but the memory is a blur of terror and darkness. I woke up hours later, alone in my apartment, the box gone. But the whispers remain, a constant presence in the back of my mind. Sometimes, late at night, I see shadows that don't belong, feel eyes that aren't there, and every so often I hear a key turning in a lock that doesn't exist.
If you enjoyed this, you might be as twisted as I am. Like, subscribe, whatever, or don't. Just means you'll miss out on more reasons to sleep with the lights on.